All right, it's 7 o'clock in the evening in Gardner, Kansas. I'd like to call the Gardner City Council meeting to order. Please rise if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to start with a public hearing. This is a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments for a waiver of distance limitation for the sale of alcoholic liquor for consumption on a premise within 200 feet of a school, church, or library. This has to do with a beer garden for tumbleweed bar and grill. So with that being said, I will open and entertain a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Deaton, that we open a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of alcoholic liquor for consumption on premises within 200 feet, I should say, of a school, church, or library during a bags cornhole tournament. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? The public hearing is now open. If you wish to speak, there is a clock on my right and your left. It's a 5-minute time limit. No profanity, no personal attacks. If you wish to speak, just come forward, state your name and address for the record. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? Public hearing is now closed. The presentation. We have a presentation by our city administrator, Jim Pritting, on the downtown sidewalk snow removal requirements ordinance.
Good evening. Okay, to recap, on July 16th of this year, the city notified downtown business owners via the Chamber of Commerce contact list that the city would no longer provide snow removal services in the downtown area. This is consistent with the city's snow removal ordinance passed in 2016 and following the recommendation of the city's liability insurance provider. The July notice was given to provide business owners ample time to secure snow removal services for the 21-22 winter season. The City Council discussed this topic again at the July 19th council meeting during council updates. There was discussion amongst the governing body about delaying the policy change for 1 year due to feedback from affected business owners. However, no consensus was reached on implementing such a delay among the 4 voting council members, with 1 member recusing himself due to a conflict of interest. A recent request to revisit this topic was received, and a request was made by members of the governing body to place this issue back on the agenda for further discussion. It is worth noting that staff did review the snow removal policies of 2 of our neighboring jurisdictions, Spring Hill and Olathe. Spring Hill requires adjacent property owners to clear sidewalks and allows the snow to be placed in off-street parking areas for city removal. Olathe requires both sidewalks and off-street parking areas to be cleared by the property owner. There is a map. I tried to the highlights didn't come through very well. I used a red marker to kind of indicate the endpoints for both the lateral and vertical snow removal points.
Is that for Parks and Rec? That's the parts that Parks and Rec have been
Yes.
additionally removing? Okay.
Yes. And that's all I have, and you were going to allow for public comment.
Absolutely, yeah. So we are kind of breaking with protocol a little bit here. Usually on presentations, we do not allow public comment, but if you wish to come forward and speak on this item, we are welcome to hear your comments. Yes, we're just opening. I'm opening up at my discretion.
No, are you moving to the next agenda at public comment?
No, this is just for this presentation. Yes, please come forward.
Okay. My name is Steve Hines. I live at 29147 West 151st Street in Gardner. More importantly, my wife and I own Groundhouse Coffee at 103 South Elm. We own the bakery right next door. That's the Groundhouse Bakery, 207 East Main. We own Groundhouse South at 18855 South Gardner Road, and we own the place where Edward Jones is at 105 South Elm. So we represent both owners and merchants of the downtown area. When we opened in January 2012 and Jeff Stewart informed me that the city would be clearing our snow, I was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. As the years went on and things progressed, the wisdom of that by the city became clear. The downtown area is a confined area with numerous owners and numerous merchants, and all of the parking is public parking. So it's very different from a retail center where you have one owner, all the parking belongs to them, and they can push the snow around easily. That's the tangible side of the snow removal. The intangible side is that any downtown area is what gives a community a sense of place. This downtown area is what many people think of when they think of Gardner, Kansas. And I get that, hey, everybody wants a Chipotle, everybody wants a Chick-fil-A. I want a Chipotle. Some people I hear even want a Starbucks, which I don't really understand, but hey, there's no accounting for taste. When those places go in, they will be busy, and it will be a great thing for Gardner. But what gives Gardner community that sense of place is this downtown. Not long after we opened, we wanted to put a bike rack out front. So we were told by the city we could not put a bike rack out front. So Larry Powell finally told me if we bought the bike rack, the city would put it in, that we couldn't touch the sidewalks. The city maintains the landscape. The city puts banners downtown. So yes, it's not better than any place in town. It's just different from other places in town. It's treated differently. All I'm asking is that we delay the enforcement of this for one season. And here's a good example. So the city administrator pointed out that we have surrounding cities that don't clear snow for downtown merchants. What Gardner is missing is a time frame for downtown merchants to clear snow. So let's say, for instance, there's a snowfall on Saturday afternoon. We open at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. So I can clear the snow in front of Groundhouse. But because all the parking downtown is public parking and all the sidewalks are public sidewalks, nobody else really is required to clear their snow until the end of Sunday, and in some cases even into Monday. I believe that's true. Isn't the ordinance 48 hours to clear sidewalks? So under current ordinance, they have 2 days. So a Friday night snowstorm is the worst scenario for Groundhouse. So all I'm asking is let's step back and take some time to consider it and get some input from the community. So if there are other areas, if things need to be addressed, if the city doesn't want to push snow, but we change the ordinance so there's a 6-hour snow removal for downtown, then that's workable for everybody downtown. But I just want to be able to take some time, and the city to take some time to make an informed decision on the best way to proceed after 20 years of pushing snow downtown and all of us living with that norm. Thank you.
I have a question.
I was just going to ask the same. Are we open to questions and interaction, Mayor?
Yeah, I don't see there's a problem with that.
Carry on.
Yep.
Yeah, Steve, at Groundhouse Coffee there, where does your property actually end, going towards the street there?
Right. According to my tax bill, it ends at my wall. So technically, I don't own the sidewalk. I've never touched the sidewalk since we've lived there. But the sidewalks have been maintained, but I've never touched them.
Okay.
Steve, how many folks, landowners or building owners signed your document?
Well, you're catching me here. I'd have to count the numbers up. And it varies because I tried to focus on just people who owned their property and not people who just rent. Like the O'Connors, they own down here. Eric Mayuga, he owns. The Meisingers, they own. So I was focusing just on the people that would have ultimate responsibility for clearing the snow. I mean, it was interesting to me as I walked up and down the street and talked to people, how few people were even aware that the city was taking action. And I don't know what the answer to that. I don't necessarily fault the city. I mean, people just don't pay attention. After the first snow, I guarantee you they'll pay attention to who's clearing the snow.
But my point is, you were seeking the signature of the building owners.
Correct.
Not the tenants.
That's correct.
And that's kind of a segue for me, Mayor, and.
Before you go there, Randy, I think there's got to be a discussion about a recusal and whether or not a recusal means that you can advocate.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what I was gonna address, sir.
Yeah,
So on October 2nd of 2020, I signed a lease with the building that's labeled Timothy Miller American Family. I'm a leaseor, I'm not a building owner. So I recused myself because I was unsure of the verbiage of the policy that we're discussing right now.
Are you?
Because of that, and I've got the contract and I can submit that to public record. I also pay $76 a month for cams, which includes snow removal. So I would like to reverse my recusal as I have a better understanding as a tenant, not a landowner or a building owner, on this subject.
They got something from the city attorney.
Yeah, I mean, the standard is whether you have a direct pecuniary interest in the matter before you.
Yeah, and I don't, sir, and I could exhibit that through a monthly cam of $76. So we're taking care of the parking lot and all the sidewalk there in front up to the landowner's next line, which is Butler's.
Yeah, and what I don't know from what you've described is if the city stops performing snow removal, does your cam charge go up? You know,
No, because we've done it, and we did it last winter for that matter.
Okay, I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, we took the snow from his red.
your decision and risk.
Yeah, no, I can handle the risk, but we took basically the snow from your red wall moving east to Butler's, and then piled that into the first parking stall of that private parking lot.
I was going to ask if this map then is wrong because.
Well, that was my second question, Mayor, so carry on.
Yeah, no, please.
Well, this is the first time I've seen the map. I saw the ordinance and I see some other heads shaking yes. This is the first time I've seen this. And as I did my due diligence, speaking with past elected councilwomen and mayor, they were under the impression it was segregated by red brick buildings as to the service area. And again, this is just a verbal. I have no proof to dispute what we see in front of us, but this is the first time I've seen any sort of map that coincides with the policy. Steve, is this something you've seen before?
I've never seen, I mean, I know from practice where they stop, and they stop at the edge of at 207 East Main. They didn't do in front of your building.
Right.
And they go down as far as the athletic club.
Yeah.
And then this way they go to the pharmacy. And I don't know, I mean, you're on this side, so.
Yeah, I spoke with the landowner to the east of the athletic club, and I won't repeat verbatim what he said, but heck no, the city doesn't handle my snow. So, I mean, I'm glad to see this, but this is the first time I've seen it.
Jason, is this the same map we used in July?
Yes, this is what our park staff use. I'm not sure when this was created, but this is kind of the reference point of what we do just from a Parks and Rec standpoint downtown.
Thank you, Jason. Well, not to lose sight of my comments, I would like to reverse my recusal because I think it's plain and clear that A, I pay for the service, and B, I'm not a building owner, I'm a tenant. And to Mr. Hines' point, it's the building owners, as you read the ordinance, that would be affected by the removal of snow based on the 48-hour window.
City attorney, you got something?
Oh, I mean, the ordinance does say the owner and or the occupant. Just so you're
Yeah, I've got both of those bases covered, sir.
Okay, I'm just, you
Yeah,
said it's just
and-
the owner that's referenced.
Yes, sir, and I'll submit the copy of the lease, not in its entirety, but the portions that deal with this subject as proof of what I speak to.
Mayor, are we gonna have time for discussion? Are we gonna have any discussion, or are we just asking questions?
We're just asking questions right now. We have time for discussion
Okay.
if that's what the body is,
Because I didn't know if
You
there was
know.
any more comments from anybody else.
Good point.
yeah. Any other comments?
I'm just here, I'll step up.
Come on up, Jason.
I'm just here to answer questions. I mean, obviously, I've had the communication with property owners and business owners either way. I have talked with Steve, obviously Sam and Stacy. We've talked about it a little bit. Kind of, you know, we've looked at other communities as well just to see, you know, there's a lot of dynamics. You know, to Steve's point, if the city sees it possible to hold it off a year, I think that's a great start. It gives us an opportunity to figure out what that looks like for downtown. I know early on, if we go back to July, there was comments about, well, the chamber could help with this, and by all means we can. The difference is with the chamber, you know, the chamber is voluntary, and as many of you know, and Steve I think mentioned back in July as well, some cities like Overland Park, downtown, they might have a district that either fees or taxes are levied. The state of Kansas, I don't know a lot of them around here that would have that. I know like Manhattan, for instance, has a downtown development district, and it's actually, if I'm correct, it's done by city ordinance, and the city levies the fee, the money goes into a fund. It's used not just for snow removal, it's used for other things too, downtown beautification and so forth. From the chamber's perspective, you know, we just would encourage you to think about, downtown is identity. To Steve's point, you know, that's what people think of for identity. How that is portrayed and how that is serviced now and into the future, I think, is the important thing. And so just to encourage council to go back and, you know, to think about what do we want our downtown to be in the long run and how does that operate? Getting all of, I think I sent this last one, we updated some of our records. The original email, I think, probably went out to 22 or 23, 24, somewhere around there. I think we upped it. We found a few more email addresses. So it was probably about 28 property or business owners. But to Steve's point, they weren't all, our email can go to some is business, some is property, some are both. There are a few property owners downtown that they don't want communication. Doesn't matter if it's from me or from you guys. They don't want to talk to anybody. That would be kind of, and we heard, you know, to Steve's point also, I think we're going to hear more of it. I've talked with Central Bank of the Midwest. One of their questions, you know, they've never been part of it and they don't know why. They're like, well, we're part of downtown, and not that they care. I mean, it's how it's been. But they, you know, even Mary had suggested, hey, it would be great to think about this from a collective standpoint of what does downtown look like, that type of thing. So our suggestion would be kind of probably the similar, is to hold off, you know, and we're happy to work with the city to think about what are some of those different options to try and bring some of those business owners together and property owners, because I think it's important to see both type thing.
You make a good point there, Jason, about the fact that the Manhattan district, I believe Lenexa also works the same way. That's an ordinance. That's a district created by ordinance, and you're right. They pay a fee. Each of those people in that district pay a fee, and that goes towards all manner of things: sidewalk maintenance, building beautification, and snow removal.
And I believe it's probably based on square footage, whether that type of thing. But there'll probably be some more research to be done there if that's even feasible. But businesses, nobody's ever going to like another tax or another fee. But if they see the results of it and they see it as something that's benefiting them, I think that might be something that's probably more palatable in the world than something that isn't. So,
Jason, how many times do we, and I know you probably aren't prepared for this response, but you know, on a typical season, and of course they're not really typical, they change all the time. But I mean, can we get like an example of like man hours that are usually, you know, run through for Yes.
Well, and can I clarify too, when you're talking man hours, I mean, a lot of this is city property if you look at the
A lot of it
yellow.
is, a lot of it is,
And
yes.
so, when you're saying man hours for this whole map, I mean, it's kind of different than just the businesses.
And keep in mind that it varies, pardon me, from storm to storm, and whether it's a school day or not, because we obviously, through our department, have our priority ones, priority twos, things like that. So obviously, like one of our priority ones is obviously city-owned property. The parking lot back here is a big one. Also, depends on the day and if schools are in session, because we also clear off trail systems for safe routes to schools too.
Certainly, but that's not part of this map. The trails would be more towards the north and south end of town.
Right, and the way we do snow removal, similar to Public Works, is we prioritize it 1s, 2s, and 3s.
So Mayor and Todd, I think you gentlemen bring up a good point. And to Mr. Hines' point, I think if we could table or stop the current ordinance and do a time study, because that would delineate what labor is used for city property and what labor is used for public sidewalks. Hear me out. And if we could pull together Steve's group of building owners and perhaps entertain a percentage of the transient guest tax to offset the cost to the non-city property, that could be just something that could be considered, because if you look at transient guest tax, it has a pretty finite description of how to use the money, but it would be, in my mind, and I can be corrected, but in my mind, it would further the economic development of our downtown corridor.
I don't think it can be used for that, Randy.
Well, let's look at it.
I don't think you can use tourism money. It's very narrowly defined as to
As
what
I
those
said, let's
$12
look at
will
it,
be
sir.
used.
So,
I have to pull the charter ordinance.
Yeah.
I was working on it as he mentioned it, so.
So please
Yes.
do, I appreciate
So
that.
while he's looking that up, I just wanted to say that, as you all know, I was in favor of keeping the snow removal for downtown last time we spoke about this, because I think we've set precedents for 20 years. And how many times have we been up here where we say, we can't do such and such because we're gonna set precedents? We have set precedents, in my opinion.
So are you saying we don't change it at all?
I don't think we changed it at all.
I would doubt, that's.
We have totally set precedents.
So you want to repeal the current ordinance,
Well, we weren't following it anyway.
but you want to repeal the
Sure.
current ordinance.
Yes.
Would that be for all property owners? Do I no longer have to shovel
No.
my snow?
No, it would be current downtown that we have set precedents for 20 years. We didn't set precedent of shoveling your driveway for 20 years.
But I would also say, Casey, to your point, the question I asked Steve about where does his property end, I mean, it just ends at his building. As a city owner, as a city property owner, you go all the way to the street, yeah, there's a sidewalk in between, but it seems like it's set up differently.
Well, and we always talk about we want our downtown to be a destination. I think providing snow removal for these downtown businesses is showing that we mean business. We want this a downtown destination. We appreciate the business owners. We want business down here. We want traffic. I don't know. I think we should keep it.
Of course we do, but I mean, Manhattan, Lenexa, those are
Okay.
the two that come immediately.
We're not Manhattan. We're not Lenexa.
And we're not Lawrence. But what you're saying is that all those cities do have city snow removal, and the businesses downtown pay a portion of it.
So to Councilwoman Roberts' point, then let's table it and have that discussion. And perhaps the building owners would be interested in sharing that bill once we can give them a true cost of what that labor looks like after this winter, so that we can do a time study between the city property, to Todd's point, and private property.
My concern isn't as much cost as it is liability.
We've taken the burden of the liability for years.
20.
And why should we continue?
We should continue so that we can make a good decision.
The ordinance is there for it's the property owners to do. That's the ordinance that was voted on. It was voted on almost unanimously. One person was against it. It was actually Rich that was against it, but
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you, but
Todd and Steve both voted for it because they were state statute and by city ordinance on the property owner. So if somebody slips and falls,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
on the property owner. So if we take over snow removal and somebody slips and falls, now the liability is on us. So we
Yes,
are
ma'am.
putting a liability on our taxpayers, on our citizens.
The liability has been on us, ma'am, for the last 20 years. Precedence has been set. And I believe, if you can hear me out, I believe that the policy itself was a lame duck policy, considering that it took us years to remind everyone.
There's no such thing as a lame duck policy, Randy. We have it in ordinance. It is
But it wasn't-
validly
it-
passed.
I agree, sir, but it was
Ordinance.
not enforced. Was it enforced, sir? No, sir, it was not. So that's like saying, hey, we have an ordinance from 5 years ago that says the speed limit on Main Street's 40 miles an hour, where it's posted 30. Chief Belcher pulls me over and says, I'm sorry, sir, but I'm gonna give you a ticket for 10 over. Well, sir, it's posted 30. No, we had an ordinance from 5 years ago that changed that speed limit sign. That's the way I see it. It wasn't enacted, if you will. If 5 years ago, under that council, they immediately alerted these folks, then I would be all for it. But 5 years later, they're saying, hey, there's precedence. We don't know where the demarcation is. This is the first time we've seen it. I think if we just slow down and take a look at it,
All right, well, there's one council member that says slow down.
fair enough.
One council member that says we should ignore it completely forever and just remove the
Well,
ordinance.
that would be my
completely.
ultimate goal. I don't know
All right.
that I'm gonna.
Well, let's
get
hear the
that.
rest of them out, sir. I think that's your point.
Yes.
Yeah, where to start? Like a mosquito at a news. The demarcation is simple. There's private businesses and there's public buildings. I don't care what this map says. It's easy. I can pull it up in Ames and see where's public and where's private. I don't even need this map. That's simple. So, Randy, it doesn't matter that I haven't seen this map before. I knew what was a public building and what wasn't.
But did you know where the snow removal was taking place?
I knew that it was in this area, and I had not seen this map, and I had a pretty good idea, but I don't care.
Well, I knew
You
the
know
same
why?
thing, generally
Because
speaking.
the ordinance says private owners will clear their snow from 5 years ago.
Correct.
Which means me, which means you, which means these property owners. And if you want to use the transient guest tax, even if we can, then you at least ought to be equitable, which means you better ask Central Bank, you better ask Community
I
First
agree,
Title,
sir.
you better ask every single person,
I
every
agree.
business on all of Main Street, and every business district we have in town, do you want us to clear your snow?
I agree.
Furthermore, if you're going to clear their snow, why are we inserting government in the middle of a private transaction?
I agree.
You agree. So then why would the government be in the middle of this? Why would we clear the snow?
Because they
from and
have been
them
for the
pay
last
us?
20 years, sir. So how do you roll that back?
So a bad decision made a long time ago.
No, we don't need to make another bad one. That's my point, Mark, is that we need to slow down and assess it.
So assessing it so that I can find out how many hours we spend so that I can then turn that over to somebody and say, hey, this is a private business contract that has nothing to do with me. Why do I care how many hours it is? If it's 1 or 10 million, what does it matter? It's a private business with a private contract
Because
for
you
snow
have
removal.
government hours doing that. We need to determine.
And we
what
should
those
stop.
hours. There you have it.
Save
The whole point
taxpayer
of-
dollars
I think the
and
whole point of
liability.
the whole point of the 2016 ordinance change was to remove, and it was actually driven by Midwest Public Risk. NPR is the one that came up with this originally, because what they said was, we as a city, we're bringing what's called an undue liability burden on the city because of the fact that we were doing something that we shouldn't be doing. Okay, because we looked through all the different, there was no real demarcation, but our ordinances had stated around the city that was going to be, other business owners, other residences would have to clear their sidewalks, and that they were assuming liability. What we did in 2016 was we extended that to downtown. We explicitly extended it to downtown. Okay?
And then we sat on it for how many years?
It doesn't
based on
matter
that
whether,
advice?
but let me finish, Randy, all right? What we did was we passed that, and we passed that with the intention of getting it enforced. Now, whether or not it was enforced or not, that's really more of an administrative decision, not a policy decision. Our policy decision was to extend that to downtown businesses, and I believe that at the time we said we were going to give them some time to adjust to that. And then it got forgotten. And there were some things that happened. There was internal turnover and other things, and that's the reason why it didn't happen. But the original intent was to shield the city from liability. Now, I'm willing to look at, okay, if you want to set us up where the downtown businesses pay a fee like they do in Lenexa, or they do in Manhattan or Lawrence, I'm fine with that. But there'd also be something in there that would say, as part of this fee that we're paying, we are also not going to hold the city responsible for anything that happens on the sidewalk in front of our building.
Duly noted, sir, and I couldn't agree more, and that goes back to Mark's point and my point, quite frankly. If we can understand what the labor is, then we can understand what the associated costs are that those building owners would be willing to partake in. They wouldn't know how much it cost unless we figure that out. And then we get government out of snow removal. On the other hand, we still have a subcontractor moving snow at the police station.
Correct.
So, I mean, potato, potato for me, but I digress.
So why would we want to they can find out how much it costs by calling a contractor themselves. What does that have to do with us?
Okay, well, let's figure that out.
So
No,
Mayor,
why do we need to figure it out?
Mayor, you mentioned when the ordinance went into effect 5 years ago, we were going to give a grace period.
Correct.
What was that grace period?
I believe that we were going to allow administrators to use their discretion on that. The problem was that we ended up having turnover at
So
administrators.
could that grace period that we were going to give 5 years ago apply for this year? Because we, in essence, told them now that 5 years ago.
We told them in August.
Okay, but could it be the grace period this winter?
Why do we need to keep kicking the can?
I don't know, we were going to give a grace period 5 years ago, so I was wondering why we couldn't do it this year.
Because we came back and discussed this in July. Why do we need a further grace period after we've revisited it? I mean, we're essentially making something special that's a common business expense. Randy pays cams. This is normal. Every business in the Austin's complex pays cams. Right? Todd, you probably play cams as well, right?
The parking lot.
Part of
Yeah, it's just how it's done.
management.
Can I speak to that though, Mark? I think business owners understand that, and I honestly do, and I think you're right. And even Steve and I have had that conversation. The problem is they're going into it knowing there are cams. Even Randy has cams, Todd has cams. They're going into it knowingly, and it's spelled out up front. When you have a downtown development district that has this huge group of, what did I say, 20, I can't remember if I counted 25 property owners in this area, to try and get them together in even back to July in a short time frame to organize, it's just an inefficient delivery of services. So if anything, if all 25 of them went out immediately and just tried, I guarantee they can't even get quotes, all 25 of them, because we've talked to a couple of our providers. They're already overbooked, just like everybody else, and we know the challenges. I think trying to get them that quickly to that point is what's challenging, and I don't think the organizational structure could be there. So I mentioned that about Manhattan. I don't even know if that's feasible, but at least that time frame gives them that time to take a look at, can we organize to do this, or do we even want to? I mean, we might find that only 20% of them, Steve and Sam and a few others, want it, and the rest of them don't. And then they're gonna see that, okay, great, then you need to be out there shoveling. But then the second part to that is, to Steve's point of the immediacy, there would be nothing worse, not just for Steve's business, but for any business downtown, to not be able to get their customers there because their neighbor, and unfortunately we live in a world today where we're not always the most neighborly, and their neighbor business isn't going to shovel their snow. And so as an example, Ottawa, I think it's either 4 or 6 hours for snow removal. And that's not only for the city, for business owners, but that's also for the city itself to remove the snow downtown. Because as a city, we don't want snow sitting in street side parking for 48 hours. I can't say that Jason would do that or the staff would do that, and hopefully downtown's a priority. But I think that's kind of what we're just asking, is just this extra year to actually organize. From the city standpoint, whether that's a Jim, an Amy, a Jason, working with myself, property owners, to figure out what that structure looks like, that's all we're suggesting for this year, is just to get to that point. Because I think everybody understands there's going to be, the city might not be able to do this forever, and we understand that. I think it's just trying to figure out how can we get this organized in a structural way that all, and you know, the chamber will help, but again, we probably have 60% property, 60% business owners that are members downtown, maybe 70%. We don't have a full reach. And so we're not going to be able, we can't compel them to participate if they don't want to.
So to that point, individual business owners are the ones that have the liability anyway.
Correct.
So they're the ones that need to take care of their sidewalk so that they can have business. And yes, to your point about the neighbors maybe not taking care of it, that's true. It might not happen. We could look at the 48 hours. But there's an incentive for everybody to clean off their sidewalk so that they can have business. So people will come to their business as well, right? And whether or not you organize now or never doesn't change whether or not a single property owner can shovel snow. Whether or not they even get a contractor. They can walk out there and shovel snow tomorrow by themselves, which everybody else on that street does. So I don't know why these businesses are special. I understand there's 20 years of bad precedents and 5 years of unenforcement, but if we're going to continue that, we should either charge them for it, which is a horrible precedent to set if we want to talk about precedent, or we should open it up to every single business on Main Street.
So why do we not put Christmas lights on every business?
We don't put Christmas lights on every business.
Don't we do the downtown?
On City Hall,
Oh, just, okay.
Do we do poles,
Poles.
banners, lights?
on city property. If the business owners want to put Christmas lights up, more power to them. If they want to organize and have a competition amongst themselves, headed by the chamber, they can do that. There was the Winter Wonder Award presented by the ADA committee in 2016 that I have never seen given out. That was supposed to be incentive to clean off their business sidewalks, right? The ADA committee is the one that came up with the idea of 48 hours because they thought it would be too difficult to make it less. We could revisit that. It could be 6 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours,
Well, I think
whatever.
there needs to be probably a different standard for business versus a residential. I mean, residential,
we
I
could
can
do that
definitely
too.
see that the 48 hours would make sense. But for a business, it doesn't make a lot of sense,
Yeah.
especially businesses that are so close together on a public sidewalk.
I mean, as far as the waiting a year, we could just, the opposite side of that coin is, let's see how this year's goes and see if we even need to revisit this next year. Have them take care of it and see how it goes. And if they go, that was wonderful, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a non-issue.
So to that point, Mark, and I appreciate your candor, why don't we set a timeline and give it 6 months, which would get us through the winter and into early spring, pull everybody back around the same table, visit some of the options that all of us have discussed with those building owners, and then get it in stone thereafter.
But you're gonna invite every business owner in town, correct?
Invite
Not just
'em.
these current business owners.
Invite them. I don't know that they'll show up, but invite them. And that way, we put it out through newspaper, Facebook, the city website, all the above, to where there's no reason, no excuse that nobody knew about it. Hell, we can send them out flyers or mailers.
So government should
Directly.
spend more money to let people know about something that we may or may not do that we can't afford unless we pass the entire cost on to them, which they already do in 90% of the cases.
But we don't even know what it's costing us now, Mark.
Well,
Whether it's
it doesn't
$1 we can
matter.
afford or $1 million we can't afford.
But how much?
We
how
don't
much-
know that.
How
Not
much
if you're
does
gonna
it?
pass it on.
How much does it cost?
We haven't determined that, sir.
How much does it cost for Bristol Group to clear Moonlight Plaza?
I'd have to go do square footage, take a look at per inch
I
of
mean-
snow,
I mean,
and
you-
give you a
with
cost. I
facilities
can do
background,
that.
you understand this.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, how much does it cost Jeff Jacobs to do the same thing over at
Same equation.
Moonlight?
Same equation for all of those sites.
Okay,
So at the
So-
Justice Center, it costs us around $500 from 0 to 3 inches. And then it goes up. quite a
Based on the
bit.
square footage and snow.
Well, parking lots, sidewalks, salt and sand. So if we were going to look, and cost really wasn't the main consideration, it was
no,
liability.
liability, exactly.
So
That's
we
the
were gonna
reason
look at
why it was
cost,
done.
and we decide to delay this or postpone it, then I'd like to contract this out, absent the city facilities, and see what the cost is.
I would,
I mean, we can do senior center, we can do city hall, we'll contract the rest of it. And then we'll have a dollar figure on
Now
what
you're
it's gonna
cooking.
cost to
Now that's something that we can work with, take back to those building owners and say, and I'm making this up, sir, cost $1,000 to get the downtown corridor. And we've got 10 building owners that want to participate. So everybody chip in 1/10 of the 1,000 and we'll make sure it gets done. Or that contractor, excuse me, make sure it gets done. And the byproduct of that is the government, to Mark's point, is out of the snow removal business.
Except we
It's-
hired the contractor, and what, are we collecting the money to pay the contractor?
That's what would have to happen.
Then, so now government is still involved, we are still involved. And I just would rather us be completely out of it. If our risk assessment said we should be completely out of it, I mean, that's something we should take under some serious advisement.
I think we
were
should have,
told
ma'am,
not
5 years
to
ago,
be.
Can I
not
ask-
5 years later.
Can I ask, council, how do you determine liability on that? I mean, if he owns to his wall, where does his liability go? Everything in front of his walls? How far out does it go? I mean, what's the?
Well, that is true for everyone's sidewalk. All of our sidewalks are in the public right of way. So, if you pull up Ames, it'll show where the right of way is, and it extends even beyond the sidewalk in many residential places because you have utilities in those areas. And we've had this discussion in the past, just because Ames shows that, you actually still have some residual property interest in that property. You own, whoever the building owner is, you have to, generally, you own to the center line of the right of way. So if we came back and we vacated Main Street or Elm, then the property that was in the prior property owners, even if it was 100 years ago, and you've got successors and interest, those people would get their property back. So they still have a residual property interest, even though it may not be shown on there. If we, I think what NPR is getting at, and I'd have to go back and revisit any of the guidance on that, is if we have undertaken to remove the snow and in essence relieved those property owners of that responsibility, then we're taking on the risk. And if there's a slip and fall, we'll be in the lawsuit. I did want to comment. I did look at the charter ordinance on transient guest tax. That's Charter Ordinance 18. It can only be used for economic development promotion, and that is defined in the ordinance. The first provision talks about activities to attract the location or relocation of business into the community through marketing efforts, including advertising. That doesn't seem to be applicable. The next one I think would be a stretch, but it's the only one that could apply. It says activities designed to encourage retention and expansion of existing businesses in the community. And then the third one is convention and tourism promotion. That wouldn't be applicable. So,
Yeah, and the second one, sir, I appreciate your due diligence. The second one was the stretch that I was making. We are essentially paying for that out of the transient guest tax through perhaps a third party, back to Jason's point, but financed through the transient guest tax, ensuring that we meet that second criteria.
So other municipalities that have done it, I know that downtown Kansas City, Kansas adopted a community improvement district. That's a mechanism that we've used on some of our development projects. The way it's used in this context is different. You, in essence, draw a proposed district boundary, and the property owners in that district would file a petition. You have to have at least 55% of the property owners petitioning the city. And part of the activities that the CID can perform is exactly this, snow removal or other types of activities.
Beautification, you can do
Yeah.
beautification of that, you can do landscaping. The problem is that all the folks in that district would be assessed. They would be assessed
That's
a
correct.
fee on a regular basis to pay for those improvements.
That's
And
correct.
that would go through the city.
Right.
But they create.
They create it though.
They would
Correct.
create their own.
They have to petition for it. You have to hit that 55%.
They would have to be
threshold.
willing to do that, yeah.
And that's why I think delaying it
Thank you.
one more season would afford them the ability, because, you know, there are probably some businesses in there that cost might be cumbersome for them, you know, that they
Well-
weren't anticipating.
Well, the issue is that with a CID, we do have that calculation for fees. Understand that will go up. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, let's discover that.
But there may be some folks in this district, if they go the CID route, they might not be able to afford that.
Well, those are the options that we need to look at, sir. I agree.
Again, that's not something the city needs to do. If those businesses want to get together and look at creating said CID, like any other developer does in town, then they can come to us and we can look at whether or not we want to approve said CID.
Okay.
But we don't create said CID.
Okay.
So we're not the ones driving the bus here.
Well, we've already got a downtown corridor plan in place that we're wanting to understand how to attract more business. I just see this as an opportunity to continue to attract. A small element, I might add. But good discussion.
Doing maintenance on your own property is not an attraction point.
As a business owner, to Todd's point,
Yeah, when you go out and advertise, you don't say, hey, guess what? People actually do maintenance here.
so as Mr. Hines said, when he bought that building, he was, not his words, mine, he was shocked that the precedence was that snow removal was taken care of downtown.
Right?
So that was an added value, not necessarily a reason why he bought the building or he opened the coffee shop, et cetera, but it was an added value. It became a positive message, if you will, for the rest of downtown.
That's
Do you
so
think
feels
after
strange.
this conversation, anybody looking at downtown is going to see this as a positive message that there's this kerfluffle of what's going on down here? Kerfluffle. Because tomorrow,
I'll hold my
half
tongue.
of these business owners could change ownership. That could change everything with the CID. Or if they had a group that's involved together, or if they're contracting one another together. I fully anticipate that you're going to have most all of these business owners contract themselves.
I don't think they have enough snow to contract, but I digress. I guess my point to standing up and requesting that this be added back to the agenda is there was a 20-year precedence for which there was a law in the books that was not enacted, enforced, despite the lawsuit opportunity that we had for the last 5 years. That's where I stand.
So
sir.
once you realize you have been doing things inaccurately, possibly putting yourselves in a liable situation, we should continue to do it because we were dumb before?
No, we should be able to see continuous improvement with better data and make a better decision.
While still incurring liability.
We have for the last 5 years.
And
Yes.
that's still okay.
I mean, the issue is that we have an ordinance on the books.
I mean, I could drive without car insurance every day and go, well, I did for the last 3 years, didn't get caught.
And people do
That's
that.
a
I
great
understand your
idea.
point.
And yet we all have to pay
So where are we-
uninsured insurance.
Yes, sir. So where are we at as a council then?
Well, I vote that, well, you know where I stand. I think.
I think we know where we stand, so
But
should we just?
I say give a 1 year grace for this season.
That's what I'm in favor, but
I see 6 months, 3-2.
Excuse
I
me,
see-
sir?
I see
You're
6
not in the
months.
mayor's seat. I can determine the.
Oh, I was just
the-
chiming in with
All right,
Councilman
all right.
Roberts.
No, no, that's not your job. All right, I can determine what a
Carry on.
what a consensus is without your
Carry
help.
on.
All right, sir. All right, so what is the course of action here? What do you want the city to do?
Well, I would
Nothing?
recommend 6 months, Mayor, to look at this through solid communication through and to those building owners and bring it back and
All right.
sit everybody around the table.
So what's going to keep us from being in the same position 1 year from now?
Because at the end of the 6 months, the only alternative is to utilize the policy. If they can't come to a consensus, then it goes all or nothing.
Well, I
In the
also-
meantime, how do we absolve ourselves of liability?
As you said, you're mayor, I'll allow you to handle that.
Oh, no, I'm just asking you. I mean,
We could repeal the ordinance.
That's where I would go first.
you repealed the
Absolutely.
The ordinance is for all property owners,
That's
right?
Yeah.
So nobody would have to shovel and there's no 48
Yeah,
hour
let's
time
do
limit.
it.
That way the kids can get back to getting to school both ways, 2 feet of snow.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then ice on top of that? No, I think that's outlandish to recommend. I think
Wanna
that,
repeal it.
well, no, I say that we do not repeal it. I say that we put a moratorium of 6 months and assess it specific to the map that we're looking at.
If that is the case, then I think that there needs to be agreement amongst the property owners on that strip, that if there's a slip and fall, they're not gonna hold the city responsible.
It's
We
not
would
the
have to
property
have them
owner
assign it.
that is gonna hold us responsible. It's gonna be the person
I know it's
that's
gonna be a
injured.
person who falls.
And the
slips.
court is gonna tell us we are
Yeah,
liable.
I
It
know.
doesn't matter what the
We would have to
property
have a
owner says.
contract with each of them, which
Yes.
means we're in the business with them. I don't know how in good conscience we can put ourselves in a liable position longer. If we,
All right.
So,
And now.
you know,
they've
the
even-
liability
there's
is
even more.
concerning. The
There's-
liability is concerning, and NPR is telling us that. Is that correct? That we are liable if we shovel that snow.
Yep. I mean, the
Are
issue
there any-
now is that.
are there comments, Jason, business owners, Sam? I'd like to hear from that standpoint.
Yeah,
Bring up the relief picture.
not exactly dressed to be talking about
Oh.
snow here, but
Thanks, Sam.
I have a comment and I have a question. My comment is, we're talking about, why we don't do this for other businesses around. Okay, true. The downtown is the face of your community. That's why it's been done. That's why this building is here. I was here, probably not many of you were, but I was here when this building was built. And the discussion at the time was, we need to put it downtown, because downtown is special, and that's where it needs to be. And to Todd's point, same reason why you don't put Christmas lights up all over town. You put them in the downtown, because it's the face of your community. Okay? The other thing is, there's a lot of discussion about liability. I have a hard time believing that if somebody slips and falls in front of my building or in front of Steve's or wherever, that an attorney that's representing that client is going to say, we're not going to go after the city now. We'll go after the property owner. The city, it's city property. So is it not city property?
it is not city property.
Well, I'm sure as heck, it's sure as heck not on my property line. My property line ends at my wall, like Steve said. So who does it belong to?
State statute, the adjacent property owner is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the sidewalk. That's by state statute.
Okay.
Even if it's not
Do you
on your property.
do you really think though that the city is not going to be involved in a lawsuit if somebody slips and falls?
Yeah, I think that person would sue and they would list everybody they possibly could that
Oh,
has buckets, and then our
absolutely.
city attorney would go in there and say, we don't have standing. See our ordinance right here and see these minutes from this? We don't have anything to do with that.
I hope that never happens, but I wish you luck with that in a court with a good attorney for somebody.
I-
So,
Well, the whole reason why we reviewed this in 2016 was because our risk management firm that we pay to advise us on these type of liability questions, Midwest Public Risk, they said unequivocally that if we continued to do the snow removal, that we were assuming responsibility for whatever happens on those sidewalks, regardless of I mean, it's unequivocal.
and if something happened, you were totally absolved of
Yes.
that.
Yes, that's exactly what they stated, which is why we changed the ordinance.
Well, as I said, I think good luck with that if that ever happens. Hopefully that never happens, obviously, but I have a hard time. My question, my last part here was my question. The way it's written, and to Randy's point, I think he said he's a lessee in this situation. So who is responsible? Is it the lessor or the lessee? If you have a document that says my lessee is responsible for that snow removal.
Well, it says and or, so that's a.
That's what I mean. It says
That's a-
and or. So who would be responsible in that case?
Well, if it went to court, like you were bringing up, right?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about who's responsible for removing the snow.
Either or.
Huh?
Up to that property owner and that tenant to figure it out.
Okay, if it's not done, Who does the city come and talk to?
Property owner.
Not the lessee.
I mean, we could knock on the door of the tenant, that's fine, that's great. We would notify whoever we could get a hold of, probably. But at the end of the day, it's gonna be a legal thing, right? So if somebody slips and falls in front of your, the old pharmacy property, right? And they try to sue you, and you say, no, it's my tenant's responsibility, then it gets into the contract law where you're gonna see he is responsible and he has to contract out with so-and-so, and you were absolved yourself, just like the city would.
I think everybody's gonna be involved. I think we all agree that everybody would be involved if
Sam,
something happened like that, but.
We abate a problem, whether it's mowing grass or do snow removal, and the city has to do it to abate the problem. We put a lien on the property, so it would go to the property owner.
Okay. All right.
The cost.
The cost.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
And I'll tell you right now, my biggest concern right now is that even through having this discussion, we are well aware of the consequences of this decision. And so if something were to happen this winter, it's over. Even though the ordinance says that we are putting it on the responsibility on the property owners because we're having this discussion in an open meeting. Any individual who is out there who wants to sue the city for a slip and fall has an open and shut case right now. So
And I
we are
actually-
exposing ourselves to undue liability.
I agree.
There's less liability of us getting sued if somebody falls and we are out of the equation than if we stay in this going forward.
I agree with that point.
And I had a conversation with a personal injury attorney, and I mean, it was very clear. No, the state statute is we're not in charge. And I said, well, what if we take on the liability by being in charge of it? And he goes, oh yeah, I'm coming after you. So he won't, because the state statute is there, our city ordinance is there. But if we are taking on the responsibility, we're taking on the liability, and it's not us up here. We are putting on the liability on every single taxpayer who already doesn't like that
Up to
they're in charge
$350,000.
of maintaining their sidewalk. I mean, I know when I was out campaigning, people were like, gosh, these sidewalks, they need fixed, they're broken, and when's the city gonna fix it? Oh, you're in charge of that. What? So people already don't like to be in charge of their own sidewalk. Everybody disagrees with that they said the city puts it in, I shouldn't have to maintain it. Well, that's the rules. As a
Did you speak
homeowner,
to him about the special sales tax that covers streets, sidewalks, and curbs?
talked about different
Okay.
opportunities that they can contact the city, and we have programs and things, but at the end of the day, the sidewalk is the property owner's problem. It is their sidewalk to maintain, their sidewalk to shovel, their sidewalk to,
Yes, ma'am, I
it
understand.
is theirs. So those taxpayers that have to maintain their own sidewalk are now gonna be liable for these sidewalks. That's not fair to our taxpayers. I mean, dollar amount aside, whether it costs us $1 or $1 million to shovel this, we're taking on liability that we don't know what it could be.
Yeah. The liability thing, yeah.
That's the whole reason.
It's
It had
a
nothing to do with cost.
concern.
Well,
It had nothing to do with assigning a larger burden on the people of the downtown district. It was to try to protect the city and our taxpayers from having to pay out a $2 million lawsuit.
can I ask, someone did mention though, one city, they push it to the street and the city takes care of it from there?
That's Olathe. No, not Olathe. Spring Hill.
Spring Hill. Would that be a compromise?
Well, we already do that.
Yeah,
So we already do that now.
Right.
So if they push it to the street,
Right, then
So
we
get clear
would,
the
we would
streets.
remove
Yeah,
it.
and then we.
Well, or- if they push it to a parking space, is that?
Right, off-street
Still-
parking, yeah, we would remove it.
Correct. We do all the off-street park, or most of the off-street.
Yeah, like
parking.
at Ground House, right there on the corner of Elm and Main, they push it into that first stall there headed east, if I'm not mistaken.
We would still,
And then the city
do that.
pulls it.
So all the property owners would have to do is push it into an off-street parking spot, and the city would come and take it away.
Yeah, that's current. I know where you're going. You were-
The only difference is that Parks and Rec would not be,
Parks and Rec wouldn't be pushing it, they would be.
property owners would be.
And then that would absolve us of liability, that would protect our taxpayers. And, I mean, that would,
liability is a deal breaker, right, so.
that would be following the ordinance as it was voted on 5 years ago.
So I see where this is going, and it's good conversation. So, Jim, the question I have for you is how are we going to enforce this once and for all that we haven't for the last 5 years? And I understand administration, elections, and all that good stuff, but all that's behind us. How are we going to enforce it moving forward if this continues the path that it is?
Are you talking about if we continue
If-
on what we notified them, or if we change and go back?
No, sir. What we notified them of, how are we going to enforce that, and I'll just use myself as an example, that Randy's frontage along Main Street there, if it's not done within the 48 hours as it's read now, as it reads now, how are you going to say, hey, Randy, here's your warning, next time it's, I'm making this up, $100 ticket.
Right.
And this is the ordinance that we're,
So there's a process, and we have to send them a send them a letter,
okay?
and for them to abate the problem. And what we do on grass is if they don't do it, then we go in, have a contractor do it, and then we put a lien on the property.
Okay?
But I would, the suggestion from Steve, it's gotta be a shorter period of time. 'Cause
Yes.
what happens, especially in residential areas, is 48 hours, the snow's either, it's melted,
Or it's
or,
ice.
I mean, that's way too long. Especially when you have to send a warning letter before you can do anything to abate. It has to be a shorter period.
I'm open to a change to ordinance that would shorten the time frame for businesses to engage in snow removal.
So we'd have a two-pronged feature in that ordinance, commercial and residential?
Either that, or you'd have a designated district, such as downtown, where the time would be different. And then, because if you look around town, I mean, everywhere pretty much, especially if it's a business, takes care of the issue because, it impacts their business. So we haven't had a lot of problems with businesses not being responsive to removing the snow. They don't wait 48 hours because, it'll impact their business.
The problem is in downtown, we don't have a lot of businesses that are open on weekends.
Right.
That's the biggest issue. Now, if you ended up with a situation, and we hope we do someday, like a Lawrence or a Lennox or other communities that have vibrant downtowns that are hopping every day, including weekends, that's a less of an issue. But I can understand that. I can understand Steve's concern on this one.
One question I was going to ask is, with the snow removal to the parking stalls, who clears the parking stalls on Main Street then? Is that the city or is that the
Yeah,
state?
Public Works does it.
Yeah.
Public Works to do the parking along Main that would be in front of like Gardner Pharmacy or Ground House is not a state clearing, it's you guys clearing.
Correct. And like we talked about in July, working with, some of the businesses like, Ground House that's open on the weekend, or the athletic club that's open on the weekend. You have others that aren't. Our guys do a really good job at working with those businesses, and knowing that, okay, Ground House is going to open up on Sunday. We would try to focus on making sure we get that, and it's on-street parking. Dave corrected us.
On street, yeah, that's
On-street
right,
parking.
yeah, not off street, on street, yeah.
And we would work with those businesses to get it cleared out once they removed it from their sidewalks.
Yep. And
That was just a question I had.
We've had this discussion about the KDOT plows and how they like to throw that snow right up onto the sidewalk in front of City Hall, into that on-street parking. We do that. We have to clear that out because the state doesn't do any of that. So is there a possibility that we could have something come to us? I think that there might be it sounds like there might be a consensus to set up a district time limit for removal, make it a shorter time limit.
Don't you want to get input of the business owner?
I mean,
I would take advantage of having at least some.
oh, certainly, I'd be happy to hear feedback on that.
No, I'm saying, just like Andy said, maybe they all want to get together and figure out what the ducks are, need to be in a row, and come back, and they could have a suggestion to us. You could have the Economic Development Council look at this, or committee, and then bring it forward.
I agree.
And the ADA committee as well, to look at it, to make sure.
Yeah, Public Works and stuff.
No, it's a good call. as well.
PWAC.
Everybody.
Okay, so it sounds like we are moving forward, unless there's, I know where you two stand. Is there,
Again, for me, realizing the liability is kind of the turning point on that, unfortunately. But yeah, I just can't see us putting ourselves in that position. And I can't see a valid reason why we could do that, unfortunately, so.
Okay.
Good discussion.
Yep, a good discussion, and I think it needs to continue. Let's have a, at least start thinking about how we're gonna come together
Sure.
with, not necessarily town hall, but I mean some meetings with business owners, just to get their thoughts on this.
Okay.
You could do a public, you could do a public meeting and then
Yeah.
the business owners aren't
A
the
work
only ones.
session?
You could have, just a meeting like we did the other day for the sidewalk over Gardner Road. You could do the same thing for downtown and have every business owner that wants to come and every citizen that wants to come give their input.
Sounds fair?
I concur.
All right. Sounds like we got a plan. All right, thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna move on to public comments. Thank you very much, gentlemen, appreciate it. Thank you, Steve, thank you, Sam. Appreciate your feedback, thank you. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make public comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. Again, same ground rules, 5-minute time limit, no profanity, no personal attacks. That being said, the podium is now open for public comment. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any member of the council who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Gorsuch, second Baldwin, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? Consent agenda passes. We have nothing for planning and zoning consent, nothing for committee recommendations or all business. New business item number 1, consider a request for a waiver of distance limitation and general retailer special event permit to allow for the sale of alcoholic liquor, I did it again. Liquor for consumption on premise within 200 feet of a school, church, or library. I don't even like liver during a bags and cornhole tournament.
It's alcoholic.
Sharon Rose, City Clerk, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a housekeeping item in relation to the public hearing that we held earlier in the meeting. This is for a charity bags or cornhole tournament to be held at Tumbleweed Bar and Grill this weekend. They have actually extended their state liquor license to include the area they wish to contain in this as well, and that was also approved by the state on a temporary basis.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Since we already had a public hearing on this, we're not going to have public comment on this item. Any questions, though, or comments for Sharon on this item? So I'll entertain a motion on new business item number 1.
So moved. Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Winters, that we approve a request for a waiver of distance limitation and a general retail special event temporary permit to allow for the sale of alcoholic liquor for consumption on premise within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during a bags cornhole tournament to be held October 9th, 2021 at Tumbleweed Bar and Grill, 615 East Main. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? New business item number 1 passes. New business item number 2. Consider a resolution declaring the intent of the city to issue industrial revenue bonds taxable under federal law for the purpose of financing a portion of the cost of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of Phase 2 of a multifamily apartment project within the city, Tallgrass Apartments Phase 2. Matt Wolf, Finance Director, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. On June 7th, 2021, the City Council approved resolution number 2084, the Master Resolution of Intent, expressing its intent to issue up to $37.9 million in principal amount of industrial revenue bonds to finance a portion of one or multiple phases of a multifamily apartment project, also known as Tallgrass. This financing approach would provide the developer with a sales tax exemption on construction materials, which would enable the developer to include more amenities into the project. The Master Resolution of Intent provides that the developer will request and city will consider a supplemental resolution of intent for each phase of the project. When the supplemental resolution of intent is considered for each phase, the developer can obtain a sales tax exemption certificate applicable to the construction materials and equipment associated with such phase. The proposed resolution is declaring the intent to issue up to $12.54 million in industrial revenue bonds for Phase 2 of the multifamily development. Please note that the bonds shall not be general obligations of the city, nor constitute a pledge of full faith and credit of the city, and shall not be payable in any manner of taxation. It is staff's recommendation that you adopt the resolution And please note that Bond Counsel Ellsworth is here tonight to answer any questions you have.
Nice to see you there, Mr. Ellsworth. Good seeing you. All right, any public comment on new business item number 2? Seeing none, any questions for Tyler or for Finance Director Wolf? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. My simple question is, the master resolution of intent is 37.9 million. Phase 2 is at 12.5 and some change. How many more phases, and what's the dollar amount left in the master 37.5? 37.9.
I believe it's going to be just simple subtraction of the 12.54 from the 37.9.
About 25 and some
And
change.
Dave would probably know how many phases are left.
Not positive on the phase number. Phase 1 is almost complete currently. It would not qualify for the IRBs is what you're considering because
Correct.
it was done before this action. I believe there are 3 more phases. I believe this was to be done in 4 or 5 phases overall. But I can't tell you.
But
that for a
essentially,
fact.
they draw down on that master agreement of 37.9.
That is correct.
Okay.
So not to exceed them.
Yeah, NTE. Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay. Just again, it's a reiteration here. The only reason why these IRBs were requested by the developer was to get an exemption on sales tax for equipment and materials for construction, correct?
Correct, there's no property tax abatement.
There is no property tax abatement. There is no obligation on the part of the city for any of this. This is actually what I would it's basically just, it's a taxation, not taxation, but it's a sales tax exemption only. It's not a taxation exemption for property or anything else like that. So just want to make that clear because I think a lot of people have questions about how IRBs work and how some people have said that they're giveaways. They're not giveaways. This is a ability to basically allow the developer to, forego the payment of certain sales taxes, correct?
Correct.
And a lot of those are not even in town. I mean, this is really,
Virtually none of them should be in town. We don't have the type of businesses that sell those type of construction materials.
correct. We don't have a lumberyard here anymore. If that were the case, then see that.
If we were, then we might want to look at this because sales tax is how we should be funding the city.
You're correct. But we don't have one, so.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion on resolution number 2094.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Gregorczyk, second Deaton, that we adopt resolution number 2094, a resolution declaring the intent of the city of Gardner, Kansas to issue industrial revenue bonds taxable under federal law in the principal amount not to exceed $12,540,000 for the purpose of financing a portion of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of phase 2 of a multifamily apartment project within the city, also known as Tall Grass Apartments Phase 2. City Clerk.
Councilmember Gregorczyk?
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes. Resolution 2094 passes. Moving on to new business item number 3. Consider approving new reorder point and quantity stock levels and authorizing the implementation of the 2022 Utilities Purchasing Program. Gons Garcia. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Due to the new construction plan for the next 3 to 4 years and the extended lead time to get these equipment materials, a good example is transformers. We used to get them within 3 to 4 months. Now they're saying maybe 1 year. So in order to keep an adequate level of inventory for the electric distribution and also line maintenance, staff suggests increasing the reorder point and the quantity. So for the electric, for example, electric distribution, by increasing the level of inventory, the cost will increase by $626,202, which is a pretty big number. And on the line maintenance, which is the second highest inventory we have, will be about $50,340. So I'm requesting for the city, for the governing body to approve the new reorder points and to approve to authorize the implementation of 2022 Utilities Purchasing Program, which is similar to what I did in 2020.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Any public comment on new business item number 3? Seeing none, any questions for Gons or for staff? Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Gons, I applaud your forethought on this. We're suffering the same thing, me professionally, with respects to tools and so forth. The PAR levels, how did you determine what was critical and what wasn't critical, considering that it's such a long lead time on, I mean, even Christmas gifts are going to be in question here in a couple of months?
I need to go back to 2018. We implemented a management program. Lucity is the name of the software. So we set up 5 warehouses to represent the 5 different divisions. Electric distribution and line maintenance has the highest inventory. So based on historical usage, we determine what is critical and then what amount of the min-max, that's what I call it, was the reorder point in the quantity we need to reorder whenever we reach the minimum level. So it's based on historical usage.
No, okay, I understand your PAR levels, so that's all I had, Mayor.
And then again, based on what the developer will be needing 2 to 4 years down the road.
Well, I appreciate your forethought.
Yeah. There's another discussion to be had at some point in the future about how we're going to insulate a lot of our city departments from some of the effects of this supply chain crisis that are happening right now. But I'm glad to know that from our inventory perspective with utilities that we're planning out, because you're right, there's a lot of this stuff that's just literally just sitting out in the ocean waiting to be offloaded off of ships right now. So.
And Mayor, to your point, it's just commentary, but
Yep.
even down to MERV 8 and MERV 13 filters, those
Yep.
are 6 to 9 months out. And again, this is just from my work background, but so I applaud what you're doing, Gons and the rest of your staff, because it's so important to be able to, a possession is 9/10 of the law. So if we had it and warehoused it somewhere internally, it would be much easier and better than having to depend on, a supplier that's 12 to whatever months out.
Well, you're right, and that's why I was mentioning that it's not just our utilities department.
I agree.
There's other areas that we would probably want to look at from the standpoint of critical inventory that we might want to see about how we can insulate ourselves from supply chain disruptions, because they're here. It's not that they're coming, they're here.
Oh, they've been here.
So, yeah, absolutely. All right, then I will entertain a motion on new business item number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Rorschach, second Baldwin, that we approve new reorder point and quantity stock levels and authorize the implementation of the 2022 Utilities Purchasing Program as proposed. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? New business item number 3 passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gons, appreciate it. Way to be proactive. All right, council updates. It's part of end of our regular agenda. We'll start with Police Chief Belcher.
Just remind everybody, this Wednesday is National Coffee with a Cop Day. We're going to sponsor that at the Gardner Justice Center Community Room at 8:30. Us and the Sheriff's Office will be there, and coffee will be supplied by Groundhouse. So we look to see you all there.
Awesome. Great. City Clerk.
Nothing for me.
Finance Director Wolf.
Nothing for me tonight.
Deputy City Administrator.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight, okay. Kellen Headley, Public Works.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight, okay. Do we have a hard date on the letting of the contracts for 56?
It should be October 20th.
It's 2 weeks away, okay.
I was going to ask a question. I might as well ask it now.
Sure.
Knowing winter's coming up, knowing it's going to be December, things start. Are there things? Is there any way to be proactive with any of the potholes, or is there any possible way to prepare as a stopgap
we can have a discussion with KDOT.
Okay. Maybe
I think we do. I think we absolutely do, and I think we need to be extremely forceful with KDOT on this because it's their delays that are causing this. So
they'll come out pretty quick as soon as we get some weather.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion with KDOT.
All right, thank you.
Dave Knopick, Community Development.
Well, I was fearful of breaking the streak, but since Kellen did speak on some things, I guess I won't. We do have an EDAC meeting, Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting on Wednesday of next week, so that's coming up. Just wanted to make you aware that while we've been a little bit slower in building permits, currently we have 20 single-family home permits, and the Treadway Apartments came in with their first phase, so we've got a number of building permits that are in process. They are also, the builders are also struggling with supply chain issues, labor issues, and a number of different things, and that's really influenced our numbers for the year, but most of what's in process now is coming from the east side and the Prairie Trace development, so.
Great, thank you. Parks and Rec, Jason Bruce.
I just wanted to quickly thank city staff for their assistance Friday night last week at Celebration Park for our Grand Slam Festival. We ended up selling just over 300 tickets to the event. Good food, good drink, so I heard, and good music. Weather was absolutely beautiful, so it was a great night. So staff did real well with the event.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I think there were at least a couple of council members who were out there.
I wasn't able to attend, but I do want to. I bought 2 tickets. I ended up out of town, but anyway.
No refund.
Point taken, sir. But I do want to pass along from about 8 families, so 16 people, that they just had a blast, and they thought it was better this year than the years in the outfield. They liked the intimacy of it, if you will. They liked your layout. I could go on, but so kudos to you guys, and I think it's a great event. It's been safe after the fact. I don't know, Chief Belcher can tell us otherwise, but I know our group has a college kid drive us down there. Again, I didn't attend this year, but I bought 2 tickets extra, so that nobody gets in trouble after the fact and they can have a good time. So keep up the good work, Jason and team.
Well, and I think we had a pretty good bouncer at the front there checking IDs. It was pretty tough on a lot of the people coming in.
I don't know.
I disagree, sir. I heard just the opposite.
Well, I think he wanted to tase me or something.
That may or may not have come up.
No, I was obviously there too, and it was a great event. And I too heard that they liked the location where it was. It was an excellent event. Thank you.
Yep.
You're putting costumes.
Yep, absolutely. And my wife and I went there, and we had a great time. We got to see a decidedly out of uniform chief of police that was letting his hair down, and it was kind of nice.
Not true. Not true at all.
Different jurisdiction.
But it was a great event, and having it on that sidewalk actually did help. It got a little congested there in some places. Maybe putting booths on both sides. I think I heard somebody saying putting booths on both sides of that corridor might have been a little bit better from the standpoint of just having some better traffic flow. But other than that, they were almost universally positive, and I just want to let you know that it was a very good time.
We appreciate that, and it's so hard, having these events on our turf sports fields, and we did quite a bit of damage with 4th of July, and having a big stage with a forklift, and the last thing we wanted to do with the forecast and the pending rain was to have those tents and those big concrete weights out on the field. But we thought it went pretty good, and yeah, there's some things that we could probably tweak for next year based on the numbers. So, but we appreciate the feedback.
Great, thanks, Jason. Gons Garcia.
Nothing tonight.
All right, great. City Attorney.
Nothing for me.
All right, and City Administrator.
Nothing for me.
All right, excellent. All right, I believe that we're going to start over here on my left because I never start with Casey. But we do have an executive session after this, just letting everybody know. So, Casey.
Nothing from me, Jim.
Nothing from you. Don't say nothing from me.
Well, no. Actually, when are the cones going to get removed from the 175th Santa Fe entrance onto Main Street?
Oh,
because those are It looks like it's kind of all cured, but people keep knocking over and everything. I don't know. It's exciting. I'm thinking everybody wants the coast. But
Yeah, I don't have that answer right this second, but I'll get it out to you by tomorrow.
they keep getting shifted or run over, but I don't know. Sooner the better would be awesome. Thank you. That's it.
Councilman Gregorczyk.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it was Mark's turn, but I didn't realize he
Yeah,
departed.
He skedaddled.
Skedaddled. So again, I just want to say great job to Jason and team. I think we belabored that. And then thank you to Jim and team. I think it would be Jim and Kellen, if I'm not mistaken. The new truck signs with the $200 fine has been posted, and it's throughout the city based on what I drove. And I socialized that picture to certain neighborhoods that have been an issue. So I applaud you guys for getting that done, and I appreciate you guys supporting that initiative. So thank you. That's all I had.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to skip Council Vice President because he's. Council President, I'll give it to you.
Well, I feel like I should delay this a little bit, but I have nothing. I'm sorry.
The only thing I had, well, obviously, other than my kudos to Parks and Rec and the police department that had several of the cycling cops out there, which was really cool to see, and the foot patrols as well. Kept everybody safe and happy. But I wanted to kind of give you guys another shout out for the Grand Slam Beer and Wine Fest. I did have one last question that was for Kellen, and it had to do with the signal, the pedestrian crossing signal at 183rd and Center, the one that's facing north from the southeast corner. There's still a cone there. There's no signal yet. Do you know when that might be replaced?
We're facing the same kind of supply chain
chain.
issues that
Yeah.
that other folks are as well. That's been on order for a while. Last I heard at the end of last week, it has shipped to us. So we're just awaiting receipt, and then it will get installed as soon as we get. What we're waiting for is the pole to put the signal components on.
Okay, so kind of the same questions that I had for Gons regarding supply chain disruptions and how we can possibly mitigate or get ahead of those. Would it make some sense to also look at your inventory and some of the equipment that you have to deal with on a regular basis?
We have been looking at it specifically for traffic signals. One of our problems is we're not very consistent across the city in the types of poles and signal components that we have. Our goal is to go to a more consistent approach in signalization, so we will be able to keep some of those long lead items on hand that will kind of fit anywhere.
I think it might be good to start accelerating those discussions a little bit, just to start to, if we have to go to a standardized type of setup to be able to get those inventory items ordered, might be the best way. Might be a good idea, an opportunity to do that now.
I agree.
Okay. That being said, that's all I had. We do have an executive session. How many minutes do we need? Oh, Mark. Well, Mark left.
I don't have anything.
Oh, he has nothing anyway. So, about 15 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Let me see. Here's 29, 28. Okay. All right, and we have 43. Okay, I will entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Motion Deaton, second Winters, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege related to the Gardner Road I-35 interchange project beginning at 8:29 p.m. and returning to regular session at 8:44 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? We are in recess. Entertain a motion to resume regular
So
session.
moved.
Second.
Motion York, second Baldwin, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? We're back in regular session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? We are adjourned.